In a quiet little town surrounded by green hills and vast fields of golden wheat, there lived a boy named Ethan. He was 12 years old, with curly brown hair that always seemed a bit messy, no matter how much he tried to comb it. His eyes sparkled, with curiosity, as if he were constantly solving puzzles in his mind. Ethan wasn't like most kids his age. He didn't spend hours playing video games or asking for the latest toys. Instead, he loved tinkering with broken gadgets, trying to figure out how they worked. To him, every discarded radio or old clock was a treasure waiting to be fixed. Ethan lived with his grandmother, Mrs. Harper, in a small house at the edge of town. The house had seen better days. Its paint was peeling, and one of the steps leading up to the porch creaked loudly whenever someone walked on it. But inside, the home was warm and filled with love. Pictures of Ethan's parents hung proudly on the walls, their smiling faces frozen in time. They had passed away in a car accident when Ethan was just 6 years old, leaving him and his grandmother to fend for themselves. Life hadn't been easy since then, but Mrs. Harper always reminded Ethan that hard work and kindness could get them through anything. Every morning, Ethan woke up early to help his grandmother with chores before heading off to school. Sometimes he'd water the vegetable garden in the backyard where tomatoes, carrots, and lettuce grew abundantly. Other times he'd sweep the porch or wash dishes after breakfast. Even though they didn't have much money, Ethan never complained. He knew his grandmother worked tirelessly to keep food on the table and clothes on his back. She took in sewing jobs from neighbors and baked pies to sell at the local market. Every penny counted. Despite their struggles, Ethan excelled in school. He attended Maplewood Academy, a prestigious private school known for producing some of the brightest students in the region. Most families paid hefty tuition fees to send their children there, but Ethan had earned a full scholarship based on his academic performance. From the moment he started attending, teachers noticed something special about him. He soaked up knowledge like a sponge, especially in math and science classes. While other students groaned over equations or lab experiments, Ethan dove into them with enthusiasm. But life at Maplewood wasn't all smooth sailing. Many of Ethan's classmates came from wealthy families who drove luxury cars and wore designer clothes. Some of them teased Ethan because his sneakers were scuffed and his backpack had a patch sewn onto it. Once, during lunchtime, a group of boys snickered when they saw him pull out a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil instead of buying food from the cafeteria. Ethan ignored them, pretending not to hear their whispers. Deep down, though, their words stung. Still, he refused to let them bring him down. He reminded himself that intelligence and character mattered more than fancy clothes or expensive lunches. Mrs. Harper often told Ethan stories about her own childhood, growing up poor but happy. "We didn't need shiny things to make us smile," she'd say, her voice soft but firm. "What matters is what's inside your heart." Those words stuck with Ethan, guiding him through tough times. Whenever he felt discouraged, he thought about his grandmother's sacrifices and resolved to make her proud. After school, he'd bury himself in books or tinker with inventions in the garage, dreaming of becoming an engineer someday. One day, he promised himself, he'd build something amazing that would change people's lives. One of Ethan's proudest creations was a small robot made from spare parts he found around the house. It wasn't perfect. It wobbled when it moved, and its arms sometimes fell off, but it worked. Ethan programmed it to pick up objects and even respond to simple commands. When he showed it to his science teacher, Mr. Carter, the man's eyes lit up with excitement. "This is incredible, Ethan," Mr. Carter exclaimed. "You've got real talent. Keep going, you might just invent the next big thing." Encouraged by his teacher's praise, Ethan entered a statewide science fair with a project he called Clean Water for All. Using recycled materials like plastic bottles and scraps of metal, he built a portable water filtration system designed to remove impurities from dirty water. The judges were impressed not only by the invention itself, but also by Ethan's explanation of why he created it. "In many places around the world, people don't have access to clean drinking water," he said earnestly. "I wanted to show that you don't need expensive tools to solve big problems. Sometimes all you need is creativity and determination." Ethan didn't win first place at the science fair, But he did receive honorable mention, and more importantly, he caught the attention of someone important. A man sitting in the audience, dressed in a sharp suit and jotting notes on a clipboard, watched Ethan's presentation closely. Little did Ethan know this stranger would soon play a pivotal role in his life. As Ethan walked home from school each day, he often gazed up at the sky, imagining what the future held. Would he ever escape the shadow of poverty? Could he turn his dreams into reality? For now, he focused on doing his best, knowing that every step forward brought him closer to his goals. And though challenges lay ahead, Ethan faced them with courage and hope, ready to prove that greatness could come from the most unexpected places. The following Monday started like any other day for Ethan. He woke up early, helped his grandmother water the garden and packed his lunch, a simple sandwich wrapped in foil, along with an apple he'd picked from their tree. As he walked to school, the morning air was crisp and the sun cast a golden glow over the fields surrounding the town. Ethan felt hopeful. Despite the teasing and occasional snide remarks from some of his classmates, he loved learning and looked forward to another day of discovery. When Ethan arrived at Maplewood Academy, everything seemed normal at first. The hallways buzzed with chatter as students compared weekend plans or hurried to their lockers. Ethan made his way to homeroom, where he greeted Mr. Carter, his favorite teacher. But before class could begin, the intercom crackled to life, and Principal Grayson's voice echoed through the building. "Ethan Harper, please report to my office immediately." Ethan froze. His stomach tightened into knots. Being called to the principal's office was never a good sign, especially when it happened without warning. He exchanged worried glances with Mr. Carter, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Don't worry, Ethan," the teacher whispered. "You haven't done anything wrong." Still, Ethan couldn't shake the uneasy feeling growing inside him as he left the classroom and headed toward the administration wing. Principal Grayson's office was located at the end of a long hallway lined with trophies and framed photographs of past graduates. The room itself was intimidating, walls covered in dark wood paneling, shelves filled with thick books, and a large desk that seemed more like a fortress than furniture. When Ethan entered, he found Grayson sitting behind the desk, his expression unreadable. There was no warmth in his eyes, only cold calculation. "Sit down, Ethan," Grayson said, gesturing to a chair across from him. Ethan obeyed, clutching his backpack tightly in his lap. For a moment, the principal simply stared at him, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk. Finally, he spoke. "I've reviewed your scholarship status, and I regret to inform you that we can no longer continue offering financial aid to support your education here at Maplewood Academy." Ethan blinked, stunned. "What? Why?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Grayson leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly as if delivering bad news was something he did every day. "It's not about your academic performance. Ethan, you're a bright student and your contributions to the science department have been commendable. However, this is a private institution, and we must consider the overall image we project to our donors and community members. Your circumstances," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "are becoming a distraction. Some parents have expressed concerns about the disparity between their children's appearances and yours. It reflects poorly on the school." Ethan's heart sank. He felt heat rising to his cheeks, embarrassment mixing with anger. "You're kicking me out because I don't wear fancy clothes?" he asked, incredulous. "It's not just that," Grayson replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Your presence creates an imbalance. We aim to provide an environment where all students feel comfortable and inspired to succeed. Unfortunately, your situation undermines that goal." Ethan wanted to argue, to tell Grayson how unfair this decision was, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he sat silently, staring at the floor. He thought about all the late nights he'd spent studying, all the projects he'd poured his heart into, all the dreams he'd dared to dream. Was it really going to end like this? Because of something as trivial as the clothes he wore? Before Ethan could respond, Grayson handed him a folder containing paperwork. "This outlines the process for transferring to another school," he explained. We'll assist you in finding a suitable alternative, of course, but effective immediately, your enrollment at Maplewood Academy is terminated. Ethan stood up slowly, gripping the folder so tightly his knuckles turned white. He wanted to say something, anything, to defend himself, but the lump in his throat wouldn't let him speak. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the office, fighting back tears. As he stepped outside, the bright sunlight felt harsh against his face. How could this happen? He had worked so hard given everything. He had to prove himself, and now it was all being taken away. Not because he failed, but because someone decided he didn't fit the mold they wanted to present to the world. When Ethan got home, his grandmother was waiting for him on the porch, knitting needles clicking softly as she worked on a scarf. She looked up when she heard the gate creak open and immediately noticed the sadness etched on her grandson's face. "Ethan, what's wrong?" she asked, setting her knitting aside and standing up. Unable to hold it in any longer, Ethan burst into tears. Through choked sobs, he told her everything: the meeting with Grayson, the reasons behind his expulsion, the crushing weight of rejection. Mrs. Harper listened quietly, her own eyes filling with tears. When he finished, she pulled him into a tight hug, rocking him gently as she murmured comforting words. "Oh, my sweet boy," she said softly. "They don't see you for who you truly are. They don't understand the brilliance inside you. But don't let them take away your light. You're stronger than this, Ethan. We'll figure it out together." That night, Ethan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The room was silent except for the faint hum of crickets outside his window. He replayed the day's events over and over in his mind, each memory cutting deeper than the last. He wondered if he'd ever find a place where he truly belonged, a place where people valued him for his ideas and determination rather than his appearance or background. Despite the heaviness in his chest, Ethan refused to give up. He thought about his inventions, his love for science, and the dream of making a difference in the world. Maybe this setback wasn't the end of his journey. It was just another challenge to overcome. With his grandmother's unwavering support and his own resilience, he knew he could rise above this injustice. But even as hope flickered within him, he couldn't help wondering, would anyone else stand up for him? Or would he have to fight this battle alone? The next morning dawned bright and clear, but Ethan woke up feeling heavy-hearted. The events of the previous day still weighed on him like a storm cloud that refused to pass. He lay in bed for a while, staring at the cracks in the ceiling and wondering what the future held. His grandmother had reassured him countless times the night before, telling him they'd find a way to move forward. But deep down, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that his dreams were slipping further out of reach. After a quiet breakfast, Ethan decided to help his grandmother in the garden. They worked side by side, pulling weeds and watering the vegetables. It was soothing work, and for a little while it distracted him from the turmoil in his mind. As they tended to the plants, Mrs. Harper shared stories about her own struggles when she was younger. "Life has a funny way of testing us," she said with a gentle smile. "But every challenge shapes us into stronger people. You'll see, Ethan, this isn't the end of your story." Just as Ethan was about to reply, a strange sound filled the air. At first, it was faint, almost like the distant hum of an engine. But within seconds, the noise grew louder, more distinct, a rhythmic chopping sound that echoed across the fields. Ethan looked up, shielding his eyes from the sun, and gasped. Hovering above the empty field behind their house was a sleek black helicopter. Its blades spun furiously, kicking up clouds of dust as it descended slowly toward the ground. "What in the world?" Mrs. Harper muttered, squinting at the scene. Ethan's heart raced. Who could this be? Helicopters didn't just land in their small town without reason. He grabbed his grandmother's hand instinctively, unsure whether to feel excited or afraid. The helicopter finally touched down, its rotors slowing to a stop. A moment later, the door opened and a tall man stepped out. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, polished leather shoes, and sunglasses that reflected the sunlight. Behind him followed two assistants carrying briefcases, their expressions calm and professional. The man approached them with confident strides, removing his sunglasses as he got closer. His face was kind but serious, framed by neatly trimmed gray hair. When he reached the edge of their garden, he stopped and extended a hand toward Mrs. Harper. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I'm Richard Langley. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Mrs. Harper blinked in surprise, shaking his hand hesitantly. "No, not at all. We were just working in the garden. Can we help you with something?" Langley smiled, glancing briefly at Ethan before turning back to Mrs. Harper. "Actually, I'm here to speak with your grandson, if that's all right. My name may not mean much to you, but I've heard quite a bit about Ethan, and I believe we have some things to discuss." Ethan's mouth fell open. Him? What could this well-dressed stranger possibly want with him? Before he could ask, Langley gestured toward a nearby oak tree. "Might we sit down for a moment? I think you'll find this conversation worth your time." Curiosity outweighing caution, Ethan and his grandmother followed Langley to the shade of the tree. They settled onto the grass while Langley's assistants remained standing a short distance away, watching silently. Once everyone was comfortable, Langley began speaking. "Ethan," he started, his voice steady and sincere, "I understand you've recently experienced a difficult situation involving Maplewood Academy." Ethan stiffened, unsure how this man knew about his expulsion. Sensing his unease, Langley quickly added, "Please don't worry. I'm not here to pry or cause trouble. In fact, I'm here because I admire what I've learned about you." He paused, studying Ethan's face. "A few months ago, I attended a statewide science fair where you presented a remarkable invention, a portable water filtration system made from recycled materials. Your project caught my attention, not only because of its ingenuity, but also because of the passion and purpose behind it. I've spent years investing in innovative technologies, and I can tell when someone has the potential to make a real impact. You, Ethan, are one of those people." Ethan stared at Langley, stunned. No one had ever spoken to him like this before, with such genuine admiration and belief in his abilities. "But why are you here now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Langley's expression softened. "When I heard about your expulsion from Maplewood Academy, I was shocked, and frankly, appalled. Expelling a student of your caliber simply because of their financial circumstances is unacceptable. So, I decided to investigate further, and after speaking with a few teachers who know you well, I realized I needed to meet you personally." Ethan glanced at his grandmother, who looked equally astonished. "Mr. Langley," she said cautiously, "we appreciate your concern, but what exactly do you plan to do?" Langley leaned forward slightly, his tone earnest. "First, let me introduce myself properly. I'm a self-made entrepreneur and philanthropist. Over the years, I've built several successful companies, many of which focus on sustainable technology. I believe strongly in supporting young innovators like Ethan, whose ideas have the power to change the world. That's why I'm here today, to offer my help." Ethan's eyes widened. "Help? From someone like Richard Langley?" It sounded too good to be true. "I'd like to cover all of Ethan's educational expenses moving forward," Langley continued, "whether that means enrolling him in another school, hiring private tutors, or even setting up a lab for him to continue his experiments. It's entirely up to him. Additionally, I'd be happy to fund any projects he wants to pursue. All I ask is that he uses these opportunities to keep pushing boundaries and making a difference." For a long moment, no one spoke. Ethan felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted. This man, a billionaire no less, was offering him everything he'd ever dreamed of and more. But it was overwhelming too. Could he really accept such generosity? Would accepting it change who he was? Finally, Mrs. Harper broke the silence. "This is incredibly generous, Mr. Langley," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But why would you do this for someone you've never met?" Langley smiled, his gaze shifting between Ethan and his grandmother. "Because talent shouldn't be wasted due to circumstance. Because Ethan reminds me of myself when I was younger, determined, resourceful, and full of potential. And because the world needs more people like him." Tears welled up in Mrs. Harper's eyes as she turned to Ethan. "What do you think, sweetheart? Do you want to take Mr. Langley up on his offer?" Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. He thought about all the late nights he'd spent tinkering with inventions, all the times he'd been teased for being different, and all the dreams he'd dared to dream despite the odds. This was his chance to prove that those dreams weren't foolish, that they mattered. Slowly, he nodded. "Yes," he said, his voice firm despite the lump in his throat. "Thank you, Mr. Langley. I won't let you down." Langley's smile widened and he reached out to shake Ethan's hand. "You already haven't, Ethan. Now let's get to work." As the three of them sat under the oak tree discussing plans for the future, Ethan couldn't help but glance occasionally at the helicopter resting in the field. It felt surreal, like something out of a movie. Yet here he was, moments away from stepping into a new chapter of his life. For the first time, in days, hope burned brightly within him. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he wouldn't face them alone. The days following Richard Langley's unexpected visit were a whirlwind of activity for Ethan and his grandmother. At first, it felt surreal, like stepping into a dream where everything seemed too good to be true. But as the reality of Langley's offer sank in, excitement began to replace disbelief. For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan allowed himself to imagine a future without limits. Langley wasted no time putting his plan into action. Within a week, he arranged for Ethan to tour some of the best schools in the region, from elite private academies to specialized STEM institutions. Each school showcased state-of-the-art facilities, gleaming science labs filled with cutting-edge equipment, libraries stocked with thousands of books, and classrooms designed to inspire creativity. As Ethan walked through these halls, he couldn't help but marvel at how different they were from Maplewood Academy, not just in terms of resources, but also in atmosphere. The teachers greeted him warmly, eager to learn about his interests and aspirations. Students chatted animatedly about their projects and ambitions, their enthusiasm infectious. But choosing a new school wasn't an easy decision. Ethan wanted to make sure he picked the right place, a place where he could thrive academically while staying true to himself. After much deliberation, he decided on Horizon Tech Academy, a prestigious institution known for nurturing young innovators. What sealed the deal was its commitment to hands-on learning and community service. "This feels like somewhere I can belong," Ethan told Langley during one of their meetings. "It's not just about grades or fancy uniforms here. It's about making a difference." With his education secured, Langley turned his attention to supporting Ethan's inventions. He rented a small workshop near the Harper's home, transforming it into a fully equipped lab complete with tools, materials, and even a 3D printer. When Ethan stepped inside for the first time, his jaw dropped. Shelves lined the walls, holding jars of screws, wires, and other components. A large workbench stood in the center, surrounded by stools and lamps that cast bright light over every corner. It was every tinkerer's dream come true. "This is amazing," Ethan exclaimed, running his fingers over the smooth surface of the workbench. "I've never had anything like this before." Langley chuckled, leaning against the doorway. "Consider it your playground, Ethan. Use it however you see fit. And if you need more supplies or bigger equipment, just let me know." Ethan spent countless hours in the lab, pouring his energy into new projects. One of his earliest creations was an improved version of his water filtration system, now compact enough to fit inside a backpack. He tested it rigorously, ensuring it could purify even the dirtiest water sources. Another invention was a solar-powered charger designed for remote areas without electricity access. Both devices reflected Ethan's determination to solve real-world problems, especially those affecting underprivileged communities. As word spread about Ethan's partnership with Langley, people began taking notice. Local newspapers published articles highlighting his journey, from being expelled from Maplewood Academy to receiving support from one of the country's most successful entrepreneurs. Journalists praised his resilience and ingenuity, calling him a young visionary destined for greatness. Teachers who had once doubted whether Ethan would succeed outside their school now admitted they'd underestimated him. Even classmates, who had teased him, reached out, apologizing for their behavior and congratulating him on his achievements. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came when Langley organized a press conference outside Maplewood Academy. Standing behind a podium adorned with microphones, Langley addressed reporters and parents gathered there. "What happened to Ethan Harper should never happen to any child," he declared, his voice firm yet compassionate. "Talent knows no socioeconomic boundaries, and neither should education. Expelling a student because of their financial circumstances is not only unjust, it's detrimental to society as a whole." His words resonated deeply, sparking outrage among many attendees. Parents demanded accountability, questioning how such a decision could have been made in the first place. Within days, petitions circulated online calling for Principal Grayson's resignation. The backlash grew so intense that the school board convened an emergency meeting, ultimately deciding to remove Grayson from his position. His replacement, Dr. Evelyn Carter, vowed to prioritize inclusivity and support for all students regardless of background. For Ethan, seeing justice served was bittersweet. While he was glad others wouldn't face the same treatment he had, part of him wished none of this had happened in the first place. Still, he chose to focus on the positives, the opportunities ahead and the chance to inspire others facing similar challenges. One evening, as Ethan sat in the lab tinkering with a prototype, Langley stopped by to check on his progress. "How's it going?" he asked, pulling up a stool beside Ethan. Ethan grinned, holding up the device proudly. "Almost done. This one's supposed to detect water contaminants faster than my last model. If it works, it could save lives in places without proper testing facilities." Langley nodded approvingly. "Impressive. You're truly gifted, Ethan. But remember, success isn't just about building great inventions, it's about using them to uplift others. Keep that in mind as you move forward." Ethan paused, reflecting on Langley's words. He realized that beyond personal achievement, his ultimate goal was to create solutions that benefited humanity. That realization fueled his passion even more, pushing him to work harder and think bigger. Weeks turned into months and Ethan continued to excel. His inventions earned recognition at national competitions, drawing attention from scientists and engineers around the world. Some offered collaborations, while others invited him to speak at conferences. Though still young, Ethan found himself standing alongside adults twice his age, sharing ideas and exchanging knowledge. Each experience reinforced his belief that innovation transcended age and background. Back home, Mrs. Harper watched her grandson grow with pride. She often joined him in the lab, helping sort materials or simply keeping him company as he worked late into the night. On quieter evenings, they'd sit together on the porch, sipping lemonade and talking about the future. "You're doing incredible things, Ethan," she'd say, her eyes shining with admiration. "Your parents would be so proud." Though Ethan missed his parents dearly, he took comfort in knowing they'd always be with him in spirit. Their memory motivated him to keep striving, to honor their legacy by making the most of every opportunity. With Langley's guidance and his grandmother's unwavering support, Ethan knew he was capable of achieving anything he set his mind to. Life hadn't turned out the way Ethan expected, but in many ways, it was better. He had faced adversity head-on and emerged stronger because of it. Now, armed with talent, determination, and newfound resources, he was ready to tackle the world's biggest challenges, one invention at a time. As months passed, Ethan's life transformed in ways he could never have imagined. With his new school, Horizon Tech Academy, and the fully equipped lab provided by Richard Langley, Ethan threw himself into his work with renewed energy. Every day felt like a step closer to achieving his dreams, and every invention brought him one step nearer to making a tangible impact on the world. At Horizon Tech, Ethan quickly became known as the problem solver. His classmates admired his ability to think outside the box and tackle challenges that stumped others. During group projects, he often took the lead, guiding his peers through complex designs or troubleshooting technical issues. Teachers praised not only his intelligence but also his humility. Unlike some students who flaunted their achievements, Ethan remained grounded, always willing to lend a hand or share credit with teammates. One of his proudest moments came during a robotics competition hosted by the Academy. Teams from across the country gathered to showcase their creations, each vying for top honors. Ethan's team designed a robotic arm capable of sorting recyclable materials with incredible precision. The project was inspired by Ethan's childhood, habit of tinkering with broken gadgets, and his desire to address environmental concerns. When the judges announced their decision, Ethan's team won first place, a testament to their hard work and innovation. As they celebrated their victory, Ethan couldn't help but reflect on how far he'd come since his days at Maplewood Academy. What once seemed impossible now felt within reach. Meanwhile, Langley continued to play an integral role in Ethan's journey. He didn't just provide financial support. He acted as a mentor, offering advice and connecting Ethan with experts in various fields. Through Langley's network, Ethan met engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs who shared his passion for solving real-world problems. These interactions opened doors he hadn't even known existed. For instance, one meeting with a renewable energy specialist sparked an idea for a solar-powered irrigation system aimed at helping farmers in drought-prone regions. Another conversation with a medical device inventor led to a collaboration on creating affordable prosthetics using 3D printing technology. Despite his growing fame, Ethan stayed true to his roots. Every summer, he returned to his hometown to teach free workshops for local kids. Using recycled materials and simple tools, he showed them how to build basic gadgets like flashlights or mini-fans. His goal wasn't just to educate, it was to inspire. "You don't need fancy equipment to be creative," he'd tell his young audience. "All you need is curiosity and determination." Many of the children looked up to him as a hero, someone who proved that anyone could succeed despite difficult circumstances. Ethan's grandmother, Mrs. Harper, watched all of this unfold with immense pride. She often reminded him to stay humble and remember where he came from. "Success isn't about forgetting your past," she'd say. "It's about using what you've learned to help others." Ethan took her words to heart, ensuring that his inventions addressed pressing issues faced by marginalized communities. Whether it was designing low-cost water filters for rural villages or developing portable charging stations for disaster relief efforts, Ethan focused on solutions that made a difference. Back at Maplewood Academy, the fallout from Principal Grayson's actions continued to ripple through the community. After his resignation, Dr. Evelyn Carter took over as principal, implementing sweeping changes to promote inclusivity and fairness. Scholarships were expanded to include more students from diverse backgrounds, and programs were introduced to celebrate individuality rather than conformity. Some parents initially resisted these reforms, fearing they might dilute the school's prestige. However, as stories of Ethan's success spread, many began to see the value in embracing diversity. Even former classmates who had teased him reached out, expressing regret and admiration for his accomplishments. But perhaps the most satisfying moment of redemption came when Ethan received an invitation to speak at a national education summit. The event brought together educators, policymakers, and students to discuss ways to improve access to quality learning opportunities. Standing on stage before hundreds of attendees, Ethan shared his story, how he'd been expelled for being too poor, and how that setback had ultimately propelled him toward greatness. His speech was heartfelt and inspiring, drawing applause from the audience. "Adversity can either break you or make you stronger," Ethan said, his voice steady, despite the nerves fluttering in his chest. "For me, it was a turning point. It taught me that talent and character matter more than appearances or wealth, and it showed me the importance of having people believe in you, even when you doubt yourself." Afterward, countless individuals approached Ethan to thank him for his message. Teachers told him they planned to use his story as motivation for their own students. Parents expressed gratitude for reminding them of the values they wanted to instill in their children. One woman, a single mother struggling to send her daughter to school, hugged Ethan tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You give us hope," she whispered. "Thank you." With each passing year, Ethan's reputation grew. By the time he graduated from Horizon Tech Academy, he had earned numerous accolades and secured patents for several of his inventions. Yet, none of these achievements compared to the sense of purpose he felt knowing his work was making a difference. From classrooms in remote villages to disaster zones halfway around the world, Ethan's innovations touched lives in meaningful ways. Langley remained a constant presence throughout Ethan's journey, cheering him on and challenging him to aim higher. On Ethan's graduation day, Langley presented him with a small wooden box containing a key. "This unlocks something special," Langley said with a smile. Inside was a certificate granting Ethan full ownership of the workshop Langley had built for him years earlier. "It's yours now," Langley explained. "A symbol of everything you've achieved and everything you're capable of achieving." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he hugged Langley tightly. "I wouldn't be here without you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." As Ethan stood on the stage accepting his diploma, he glanced at the crowd. There was his grandmother clapping proudly, Langley nodding with approval, and countless others whose lives he'd touched along the way. In that moment, Ethan realized that success wasn't measured by awards or recognition. It was about the connections you forged and the impact you made. Looking ahead, Ethan knew challenges still lay ahead. But armed with resilience, creativity, and a supportive network, he was ready to face whatever came his way. More importantly, he understood that his journey wasn't just about personal triumph. It was about paving the way for others to follow. And as long as he kept striving to make the world a better place, he knew he'd never truly fail. Years passed, and Ethan grew into a young man whose name became synonymous with innovation and perseverance. His journey from a small-town boy expelled for being too poor to a globally recognized inventor was nothing short of extraordinary. Yet despite his success, Ethan never lost sight of the values instilled in him by his grandmother and the lessons he'd learned along the way. He carried those principles with him everywhere, using them as a compass to guide his actions. By the time Ethan reached his mid-20s, he had founded his own company, Harper Innovations. The business focused on creating affordable, sustainable technologies designed to improve lives in underserved communities. From solar-powered water pumps that brought clean drinking water to remote villages to low-cost medical devices that made healthcare accessible to millions, Ethan's inventions transformed countless lives. What set Harper Innovations apart wasn't just its groundbreaking products, it was the philosophy behind them. Ethan believed that technology should serve humanity, not exclude it. Every decision he made reflected this belief, ensuring that profit never overshadowed purpose. One evening, Ethan found himself standing on stage at an international conference honoring young innovators. The grand hall was filled with luminaries, scientists, entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and world leaders, all gathered to celebrate achievements that pushed the boundaries of human potential. As the host announced Ethan's name, the audience erupted into applause. Cameras flashed, capturing every moment as he stepped forward to accept the trophy engraved with his name. Holding the award in his hands, Ethan felt a mix of emotions: pride, gratitude, and humility. He glanced out at the crowd, searching for familiar faces. There, sitting near the front row, was his grandmother, Mrs. Harper, her eyes glistening with tears. Beside her sat Richard Langley, who gave him a subtle nod of approval. These two people had been the pillars of his life, supporting him through every challenge and cheering him on during every triumph. Without them, Ethan knew he wouldn't be where he was today. Taking a deep breath, Ethan began his acceptance speech. "When I was 12 years old," he started, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I thought my dreams were over. I was told I didn't belong, not because of what I could do, but because of how I looked or what I owned. For a while, I let those words define me. But then something changed. People like my grandmother and Mr. Richard Langley reminded me that talent has no price tag, and determination knows no limits." He paused, looking directly at Langley and Mrs. Harper. "Thank you both for believing in me when I couldn't. Believe in myself. This award isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who stood by me, encouraged me and showed me that greatness can come from the most unexpected places. Ethan went on to talk about the importance of inclusivity in education and innovation. Too often we judge people based on their circumstances instead of their potential, he said. But the truth is, brilliance exists everywhere. In bustling cities, quiet towns, and even the smallest corners of the world. Our job is to nurture that brilliance, to create opportunities for all voices to be heard. Because when we lift each other up, there's no limit to what we can achieve. The room fell silent as Ethan spoke, his words resonating deeply with everyone present. Many nodded in agreement, while others wiped away tears. When he finished, the applause was thunderous, lasting several minutes before finally fading into respectful silence. After the ceremony, dozens of attendees approached Ethan to congratulate him and share their thoughts. Some thanked him for inspiring them to pursue their passions despite obstacles. Others asked for advice on how to foster creativity and resilience in their own lives. One elderly woman, a retired teacher, hugged him tightly and whispered, "You remind me why I dedicated my life to teaching, to help kids like you reach their full potential." That night, as Ethan returned to his hotel room, he reflected on everything he'd accomplished and everything still left to do. Success hadn't dulled his hunger for change. If anything, it had intensified it. He realized that true fulfillment came not from accolades or wealth, but from knowing he was making a difference. Whether it was mentoring young inventors, advocating for educational reform, or continuing to develop solutions for global challenges, Ethan remained committed to leaving the world better than he found it. Back home, Ethan continued to honor his roots. Despite traveling frequently for work, he always made time to visit his hometown. The once empty field where Langley's helicopter had landed was now a community center funded by Harper Innovations. Inside, children laughed and played, learning about science, engineering, and art through hands-on activities. Ethan loved visiting the center, watching kids tinker with gadgets and dream big dreams. It reminded him of his own childhood, the days spent fixing broken radios and imagining impossible futures. Mrs. Harper, now older but still full of spirit, often joined Ethan at the center. Together, they taught workshops, shared stories, and inspired the next generation of innovators. "You've done so much good, Ethan," she'd say, her voice brimming with pride. "Your parents would be so proud of the man you've become." Though Ethan missed his parents deeply, he took comfort in knowing they were part of his journey in their own way. Their memory fueled his drive to keep pushing forward, to keep striving for excellence. And whenever doubt crept in, he remembered his grandmother's words, "What matters is what's inside your heart." As the years went by, Ethan's legacy only grew stronger. Schools across the country adopted programs modeled after his workshops, emphasizing creativity and inclusivity. Scholarships bearing his name helped students from disadvantaged backgrounds pursue their dreams. Even Maplewood Academy underwent significant changes under Dr. Evelyn Carter's leadership, becoming a beacon of diversity and opportunity. Richard Langley remained a close friend and mentor, often joining Ethan for long conversations about the future of innovation. "You've exceeded every expectation I had," Langley admitted one day over coffee. "Not just because of your inventions, but because of the impact you've had on people's lives." Ethan smiled, feeling grateful for the bond they shared. "And I owe so much of it to you," he replied. "If you hadn't shown up that day in your helicopter, who knows where I'd be?" Langley chuckled, shaking his head. "Don't sell yourself short, Ethan. You're the one who did the hard work. All I did was give you a chance to shine." In the end, Ethan's story became more than just a tale of personal triumph. It became a testament to the power of perseverance, kindness, and belief in oneself. Through his inventions, he proved that ordinary materials could solve extraordinary problems. Through his advocacy, he demonstrated that talent deserves recognition, regardless of background. And through his character, he showed that true success lies not in individual glory but in lifting others up. As Ethan stood beneath the stars one quiet evening, gazing at the same sky he'd admired as a child, he felt a profound sense of peace. Life hadn't turned out the way he'd expected, but it had turned out beautifully. With his grandmother by his side, his dreams within reach, and a world of possibilities ahead, Ethan knew he was exactly where he was meant to be.